Hey guys, Mr. Jalapeno here with another episode of Jalapeno Drywall. And on today's project, I'm going to show you how to repair a bubbling tape here on the ceiling in the dining room. The homeowners had a minor water leak and I'm just going to show you how to repair it. So first thing I'm going to do here is get some plastic and make a containment. That way I don't make a big old mess, especially here in the dining room. Then I'm just going to get the utility blade and I'm going to cut at the ends of the paper tape. Not all that paper tape was bubbling, so if I don't cut at the ends, it's just going to remove all the paper tape, which is not necessary. And then here I'm just going to use my stud finder to find those trusses behind the drywall. Luckily there is a truss behind the seam here, so I'm able to put a couple screws right there. Just make sure that when you're putting up the screws not to go too deep in with the screws. You don't want to rip that drywall paper. And also, depending on how severe the water damage was, you might have to replace the drywall. Luckily, they fixed the issue quick. That way it didn't create even more damage here. And after you're done putting up all the screws, go ahead and prime it. Just make sure you let that primer dry 100% before you start applying this Easy Sand 5 hot mud. This is what I'm going to be using to do the repair. You can also use joint compound, but that's going to take forever to dry. But if you have the time, just go ahead and use whatever you want. And then I'm also going to use a little bit of this 5-fuse tape. So what you have to do is apply the hot mud on the seam first and then apply the 5-fuse tape over the hot mud. Just make sure to remove any excess mud. That way it's going to be nice and flat. That's what you're aiming for. You want everything flat. You don't want any bumps because the bumps are going to make the patch visible. And that's why I always recommend to do thin coats, because first of all, there's not going to be a lot of sanding and it's not going to look bumpy, which like I said, it's super important, especially on the ceiling, because doing repairs on the ceiling is very tedious. If you don't take the necessary steps to make it look good, you're always going to see it there and it's going to be kind of an eyesore. So just make sure you take your time. That way everything's going to be looking good. I ended up doing 3 thin coats of the hot mud, and then I put up that fan. That way I speed up the drying process. Go ahead and grab a wet rag or a sponge and wipe down the edges. And now the next step is to mix up some texture. Obviously, if you have flat walls, you're pretty much done. Just let it dry, sand it down, prime it, and paint it. But you already know it wouldn't be a Mr. Jalapeno video without a little bit of knockdown texture. Repairing smooth walls is sometimes easier because I don't have to get the compressor, the hopper, and I don't always have to do a containment. But in this case, I am going to be using the hopper, as you can see here. If you are using the hopper, just make sure you adjust the settings like the compressor PSI, which I like to keep it at around 80 PSI. But once you shoot the texture, let it set for about 10 minutes before you knock it down. I'm using the magic trowel to knock it down. That way it's going to look nice and smooth. Look at that. And if you do want any of the tools and materials I use here in this video, just go to the link in my bio. It'll be in my Amazon storefront. They are affiliate links, so I do benefit monetarily if you're kind enough to use them. But anyways, I wish I could have shown you when it was painted, but the homeowner's going to do the painting himself, and that's pretty much it. Jalapeno solution. Boom.